Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, and today our book is going to end. Oops, excuse me, I'm trying to get comfortable. Do you have any ideas how you think it's going to end? Ereth and the kids are together, and we'll see what's going to happen. Chapter 27, Ereth's birthday. Ereth led the way, the three foxes trotting by his side. With the porcupine limping, they moved slowly. Now and again, the foxes darted off, but they never went far, and they always came back. At first, they chatted quite a bit, asking Ereth questions about where he lived, how he lived, whom he lived with, along the countless queries about Poppy. Ereth answered very little. To most questions, he said, "You'll see," or "None of your business, nose." So the foxes chatted among themselves. It was continual, it was loud, and was not without some bickering. Ereth paid little mind, but waddled slowly, steadily on. It had taken one day for Ereth to come from his home to Long Lake. The return trip took 2 days. There were moments he felt he should just turn around and go with the foxes to their den. But he kept reminding himself that he wanted to be in his own dark and smelly home. He also needed to see Poppy. Of course, as he limped along, he occasionally thought about the salt he'd left behind in the cabin. Perhaps someday he would go back. But as he mused on when that day might be, he suddenly stopped. "What's the matter?" Flip asked him. "I'm very old," Ereth whispered, though he found himself glancing over his shoulder from time to time. He said no more. They arrived home the following day just about noon. It was Columbine, playing about at the foot of the snag, who first saw them coming. "Uncle Ereth," she cried with delight, "you're back." "Of course I'm back, you dull dub of bobcat whittle. Where else would I be?" "But you've been gone so..." Then Columbine saw the three foxes. Frightened, she turned tail and raced into a snag. In moments, Poppy ran out. She was joined by Rye and the rest of the litter. Ereth," Poppy cried, "where have you been?" Ereth wanted to burst out with all that had happened. Instead, he said, "Oh, busy. But you were gone for a month. We were worried." "You were?" "Of course we were." Poppy looked over to the three foxes. "Are these friends of yours?" "Absolutely. This is Tumble, Nimble, and Flip. Guys, this is Poppy and her husband Rye. These mice are named Columbine, Mariposa, Snowberry, Walnut, Verbena, Surboak, Pipaswea, which I'm assuming is a kind of flower, but I'm not familiar with it, crabgrass, locust, sassafras, and ragweed the second. "How do you do, Tumble, Nimble, and Flip?" the young mice chorused. Rye considered the foxes nervously. "Are they safe?" he asked Ereth. "Strict vegetarians." "Oh, okay." The foxes, remembering all the tales Ereth had told, gazed at the famous Poppy with awe. She was so small, but she had done so much. It was Poppy who said, "Ereth, did you realize that on the day you went off, it was your birthday?" "Is that so?" Ereth replied, trying not to frown. "I guess I forgot. Sassafras ran over to Poppy and whispered into her ear, "Ma, Ereth, you know." "Oh, my, yes," Poppy said. "You really should." With that, all 11 of the young mice raced back into the hole at the base of the snag. "It's just a little something Rye and I and the children got for your birthday," Poppy explained. "We went to get it for you that morning." Ereth could feel himself blushing. "Well, it didn't seem to me that. The children said they tried to get you to stay, but you rushed off." The young mice reappeared, rolling forward with a large lump of salt, the lump being 6 times the size of any one of the youngsters, all of whom were trying to be helpful. There was much slipping and falling, squeaking and laughing. "Happy birthday, Uncle Ereth," they cried in unison when they finally reached the porcupine. It was Rye who explained, "You see, Ereth, Poppy and I got it from the salt block at New Farm. Unfortunately, it took us longer to drag it back than we thought it would. By the time we got home, you were gone. And we had no idea where," Poppy added. "Then the storm came," Rye said. "We began to think something might have happened to you," Poppy went on. Really, Ereth, we were very worried, but we didn't know where to look. When you got off that way, you really must leave some word. I began to think something awful had happened to you. I've been very upset." Ereth glued to the gift. His eyes stood there and his mouth was opened, incapable of saying a word. "Salt," he muttered finally, already drooling. "Speech, Uncle Ereth," Sassafras cried. "Birthday boys have to make speeches." Ereth took a deep breath. Pull the chain and give 5 mops," he managed to say. Even his tears began to roll down his cheeks. I don't know what to say," he murmured between sobs, "except, oh, thank you. Thank you, each and every one of you." The next moment, the 11 young mice started to sing "Happy Birthday" in a very ragged chorus. The 3 foxes joined in with howls of their own. Ereth could not wait until they were done. He snatched up the salt and began to lick it in a frenzy of delight. The mice cheered, the foxes bayed, and if Ereth's tears made the salt a little saltier than usual, that might explain why. As far as the old porcupine was concerned, it was the best tasting salt he had ever eaten in his whole long life. And here are all the mice and Ereth and the 3 kits, all enjoying, a little bit late, but better late than never, Ereth's happy birthday. Indeed, as the years went by, Ereth grew truly old, and his quills became gray and less sharp, and he looked back on all that had happened to him. He had no doubt, not the slightest doubt in all the world, that his birthday turned out to be the very best he had ever had. The end. Well, that was a nice book. I liked that one. Did you like that one? Okay, our next book is going to be called Poppy's Return. So, Poppy's family is in danger. Is the mouse enough to save the day? Find out in Poppy's Return, the 5th book of the Poppy stories. Chapter 1, Poppy and Rye visit Ereth. "Sugared slug soup," said Ereth the porcupine without looking up from the lump of salt over which he had been slobbering. "I don't believe it." "I'm afraid it's true," said the deer mouse Poppy to her old friend. "It's very upsetting. The kind of thing that makes me wonder if I've been a bad parent." Poppy and her husband Rye, a golden mouse, had gone over to Ereth's smelly hollow log for a talk. The closest of friends, they lived deep within Dimwood Forest, where the tall trees reached into the sweet air and carpeted the earth below with soft shadows. "Now, Poppy," said Rye, "the rest of our children are doing fine." Poppy sighed. "I suppose one failure out of a litter of 11 isn't bad," she said. Her round white belly had grown plump of late, though her eyes were usually bright and her whiskers full. Now those eyes appeared rather dull and full of worry, while her whiskers were somewhat limp. "You made your first mistake by naming him Ragweed Jr.," Ereth grumbled between licks of salt. "Most juniors," he said, "resent the name, or should." "I wish he did resent it," said Poppy. "Junior's problem is that he loves being a new ragweed." "Gangerous Jim Short," said Ereth. "Was there ever a mouse, dead or alive, who caused more fuss than the first ragweed?" "I'm afraid," said Rye, "Junior wants to be what he thinks ragweed was. It's all those stories he's heard about my brother." Though, of course, Poppy said, Junior never knew ragweed. All he's known is that ragweed was unusual. She reached out, took Rye's paw, and squeezed it with affection. "It was ragweed who brought us together. And if it hadn't been for him," she reminded Ereth, "I doubt you and I would have ever met." "I suppose," said Ereth. He put his lump salt down reluctantly. "Just what the flea fudge has Junior done?" "He used to be a cheerful, chatty, wonderfully open young mouse," said Poppy. "Nowadays, it's a constant frown. If I say yes," Rye went on, pulling at his long whiskers, "he says no. If I say no, he says yes. When he asks anything more than that, it's mostly, 'Leave me alone.'" "He has become rather rude," said Poppy. "Almost impossible to get him out of bed before noon," added Rye. "I doubt," said Poppy, "that he washes his face more than once a week, even though he's constantly being reminded. His own ears were large and dark, with a nose, toes, and tails that were pink and clean. And now he's completely changed his looks," said Rye, whose fur was dark orange. "Looks?" barked Ereth. "How can a mouse change his looks?" "You see," said Ereth with a shake of his head and a whisk of his tail, "Junior's best friend is a skunk." The salt fell from Ereth's paws. "A skunk?" "His name is Mephitis," Poppy explained. We don't know much about him or his family. I'm afraid the problem is that he's not a very good influence. Ereth, you need to see Junior for yourself. Oh, toe jam on a toothpick, said Ereth. He can't be too bad. The point is, said Poppy, Junior has become a teenager. A teenager, cried the porcupine. Why the weasel wonk did you let that happen? He did it on his own, said Rye, his small ears cocked forward. Then I'd better go unbuckle his buttons, said Ereth. With a rattle of his quills, he heaved himself up. Where is he? Probably down among the snag roots, said Rye. He's taken to liking darkness, too. Just watch me, Pocket, said Ereth. I'll straighten him out. Flatter than a 6-lane highway rolling through Death Valley. Be back soon. But don't touch that salt, or you'll get a quill up your snoot. Quills rattling, the porcupine clumped out of the old log and headed for the gray, lifeless, and topless tree in which Poppy and her family made their home. Good luck, Rye called after him. I do hope it was all right to tell Ereth about Junior, said Poppy. Nothing else has worked, said Rye. But what do you think he'll do? I'm not sure, but I guess we'll find out pretty soon. Chapter 2, Ragweed Jr. Serves Poppy and Rye right. Maggie, why don't you lay down quietly? Can you lay down for a minute? That's my dog. She's been out chasing chipmunks, and now she wants to come back in. Serves Poppy and Rye right for having children, said Ereth as he waddled along the well-worn path that stretched between his log and the snag. Not the sweetest smelling of creatures. The old porcupine had a flat face with a blunt black nose and fierce, grizzled whiskers. Sharp quills covered him from head to twitchy tail. They were much too young to have kids, he murmured. No experience, don't have enough strict rules, no consistency, no firmness. They spoil those youngers, let them run everything, coddle them. I mean, baboon bubble bath. Who's supposed to be in charge, kids or parents? Well, it's time I taught them all a lesson or two about how a parent should act. Hi, Uncle Ereth. Where are you going? Ereth looked up. Some of Poppy and Rye's children were playing just outside the snag. Snowberry was building something out of sticks. Sassafras and Walnut were in deep conversation. It was Columbine who had called to him. Where's your brother? Ereth demanded. I have lots of brothers, said Columbine. The one who's acting like an idiot. Most of my brothers act like idiots, said Columbine with a cheerful grin. Listen here, you piddling pile of potted pips. Don't talk back to me. The other mice looked around to one another. They loved to hear Ereth swear. Columbine, barely managing not to giggle, said, Which brother are you looking for? Ragweed, said Ereth, the junior variety. Oh, him, said Columbine, her good cheer fading. What do you want him for? I need to straighten him out. Uncle Ereth, if you want old Grumpy, he's either with his friend Mephitis or down in the snag roots. I don't want him, said Ereth. I don't want any of you. I need to talk to him. The porcupine went to the base of the snag. Since the mouse entry hole was too small for him to pass through, the best he could do was to stick in his snout and call, "Junior, this is your Uncle Ereth. I need to speak to you now." The young mice put aside what they were doing to watch what would happen. No reply came from inside the tree. "Junior," bellowed Ereth, "you get your bloated beanbag of a brain up here, or I'll unzip your bottom from your belly and give it a boot." The young mice waited breathlessly for a reply. When none came, Ereth screamed, "Don't you hear me? I said now." "I'm busy," said an irritated voice. "With what?" said Ereth. "Stuff! March yourself up here this moment," cried Ereth, "before I snuff your stuff up with your stuffing." Okay, keep your pit in your olive." Ereth snarled and looked around at the mice. "What are you watching?" he cried. "You," said Snowberry, no longer able to keep from giggling. "Good, maybe you'll learn something." His prickly tail threshed back and forth, stirred up a large cloud of dust. All eyes were on the entry hole. After what seemed forever, a mouse crawled out. Ereth blinked. Ragweed Jr. had dyed his normally golden fur tar black. A white streak ran down his back. He looked like a miniature skunk. "Yo, dude, what's going on?" said Junior. "Is that you?" said Ereth. "Ragweed Jr.?" "Yeah, what do you want?" "Why are you that way?" "What way?" "Looking like a skunk, sounding like a frog." "Because I freaking well want to." Hold on just a minute. I've got to get the dog. Okay, we've got that taken care of. Now let's see. Where were we? "Bug-bellied bromide," said Ereth. "Don't swear at me like that. I'm your uncle." "Yeah, well, if a porcupine can be an uncle to a mouse, I can be a skunk," said Junior. "And if all you're going to do is yell at me, I got better things to do." He turned to go. "Hold it right there, young mouse," yelled Ereth. "I'm here to tell you that this rudeness has to stop. You need to show some respect for your parents, the ones who raised you up, take care of you, and make sure your life is decent. Have you no gratitude?" "Gratitude is for old grumps and gimps," returned Junior. "Listen, flat-face, why don't you pick on someone your own size? Or better yet, to talk the way you do, go pack up your prickles and peddle some pickles for some pocket change." With that, Junior spun around and disappeared back into the snag. Ereth, his mouth agape, stared at the entry hole. "Bottled baby barf," he cried. "He has become a teenager." The old porcupine hurried back towards his log. The young mice, laughing uproariously, watched him go. "Did we learn anything?" said Snowberry. It was Walnut who said, "Well, Junior is still grumpy," to which Columbine added, and Uncle Ereth is still funny. Okay, well, this book sounds like it's going to be interesting. We've got another ragweed on our hands, and Poppy and Rye don't know what to do with him. I'm sure any of you who have teenage brothers and sisters will be able to make a lot of connections with this book. We'll just have to wait and see. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will continue our new book, Poppy Returns, on Monday.